Welcome, everybody, to the Scale Up Show. This is your host, Ryan Staley, and I have a very special guest with me today. I have Doug Dennerline. Doug is the CEO and executive chairman of Betterworks. So Doug has an amazing history that touches a lot of different areas. So I'm really excited to have him on the show. He's been in Silicon Valley since '82, starting with HP, was also a senior vice president at 3Com, then at Cisco, where he took the sales group from 400 to 6,000 people. Also then became the CEO of Webex, where Eric Yuan, who is the founder of Zoom, used to work for him as the CTO. On top of it too, we're not stopping there. Grew a company from 0 to 100 million, sold to a PE firm, and now is doing it all over again with Betterworks in terms of reinventing the way people are managed. Doug, welcome. Happy to have you on the show, man.
Thanks, Ryan. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a hell of a background you got. So I mean, there's probably like 10 trillion questions I could ask you in terms of what we did. However, before we do that, I want to get a real quick understanding of your where you're at, kind of the stage of the journey with Betterworks, just so you, the listener, has an understanding of kind of where they're at. So where are you guys at roughly in terms of your ARR? Where are you guys at in terms of your stage of growth?
Yeah, we're just passing through 20 million ARR.
Okay, just passing through 20 mil. And then at the same time, what's your team size?
We're about 200 people today.
Okay, 200. What's your primary go-to-market strategy for growing the business?
We're an enterprise SaaS application, and our go-to-market is very expensive salespeople. Supported by all the things that you do in a SaaS business, SDRs, good marketing background, content creation, all the things that you do to be, in the marketplace as a software as a service company.
I love that. Very expensive salespeople. That's a fantastic answer. I have to repurpose that and use that myself. Okay, so can you walk us through your solution in like 2 or 3 sentences and who it serves exactly?
Yeah, so basically, Ryan, what we're trying to do is reinvent the performance process how large companies manage people. Today, even though it's a 100-year-old process, literally 100 years old, is the annual performance review. It's a process that, research has proven that people hate getting it, people hate giving it, and it doesn't change performance. And so yet 75% of large companies still do it today. So we spent a lot of time reinventing a process that's not backwards looking. It's all about kind of continuous conversations about goal setting together, trying to make sure that you're aligned to what the corporation's trying to accomplish, the company's trying to achieve, and what are you personally trying to achieve within the company, and creating conversations between manager and individual contributor that they find meaningful versus punitive, which is how the process works today, and all the things that are wrapped around that in an HR process, in a human resources process.
I love that. I mean, like, I normally don't go on a offshoot pattern in the middle of an intro, but literally the hardest my team ever worked for me was when I was able to connect the corporate goals to what their individual goals were, both personally and professionally. So like, love the way you summarize it, because I've seen it firsthand in terms of like, that's the hardest and best they've ever worked for me is when I did that. So I think you're definitely onto something with that. So
yeah, it makes a big difference in engagement scores inside of companies when, there's a stat out there. I forget which research firm, but says that 78% of people in a company greater than 1,000 people don't really understand how their work helps the company achieve its goals.
Really? That high, huh? 78%?
Yeah.
So they don't understand the value of what they're doing and that's companies of over 1,000, right? Is it still the same with companies under that or no? Or just similar?
I don't know as much, Ryan, because we're really focused on the high end of mid-market and large enterprise. And so I've been selling in that space my entire career for the most part.
True. Okay. So then last but not least, are you bootstrapped or funded?
We're funded. I have my Series A was done by John Doerr at Kleiner Perkins. John, and one fundamental to what we started as, Ryan, was an OKR platform, an objective and key results platform for goal setting.
Okay, gotcha.
And John Doerr, worked for Andy Grove at Intel for many years, and Andy Grove's the father of the OKR methodology. And so John has been very passionate about the company and the journey we've been on. And so he's been a large investor himself personally, as well as in Kleiner and also with Emergence Capital.
Okay. That's awesome. And I mean, that's I literally have his book sitting on my shelf over there. So, so good resources to pull from both financially and I'm sure intellectually as well. So as we progress, let's get into your story, right? You've had a real interesting journey and in terms of how you got here. So walk us through what happened. Like I think on the pre-show, I love just kind of the way you walk through things. So walk us through exactly how you got to this point and then what inspired you to begin the company.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? I have one of those careers where I'm gone from large to small. But I was a very early employee at 3Com Corporation. The person who invented Ethernet. I was the founder of 3Com Corporation, and I spent almost 11, 12 years there. I got to live in Hong Kong for 3 years with my family and spent a year in Japan. And then I fell into, because I was in the networking business, I fell into that role at Cisco. I went there in
Mm-hmm.
'98 when things were basically on fire in the whole networking world and the .com boom. And Cisco had just massive growth when I was there. So I tell people I would open up a class every Monday morning that it was a fast assimilation class for new hires, and there'd be 1,200 people in it every Monday morning from
Wow.
1998 to 2001. And so we went from 14,500 people to 48,500 people in 2.5 years. And the growth was just, one of those amazing experiences I got to experience in my life, just kind of being in the right place at the right time. And I led a very large sales team that grew from 400 to 6,000 in that same period of time, kind of half SEs and half systems engineers, if you will. And from there, my last role at Cisco, we were a networking company, but we didn't have a network, and so I wanted to put us in the software as a service business so we could see what it took to help companies put software as a service networks in place in those days. And so we went out to acquire a software as a service company. We ended up buying Webex. And that was a great experience in itself. We bought Webex in 8 days. They were under
Wow.
contract to be acquired by somebody else, and we wanted to act quickly, and so we did, and closed that deal in 8 days. And then I became the general manager, CEO of Webex internally at Cisco for 3 years. Eric Yuan, again, was my tech guy, and he now left and founded Zoom, and is a
Wait,
very good
Doug,
lifelong friend.
can I hold you there? Cause like you're dropping so much gold. I don't want to gloss over it. So there's a couple things, right? So first thing, let's and then I want to get to Eric, right? From Zoom, who used to be your tech guy, which is it sounds funny saying that. He used to be my tech guy, right? However, so let's talk about like the pure chaos of the growth that you had where 1,200 new people were at like your it sounds like your Monday morning intro meeting that you had with them or whatnot,
Yeah,
right? And then the 400 to 6,000 salespeople. Let's just take the 1,200 new people every week first. Like, what was that like, and how did you remember anybody? Like, how did that whole process kind of
yeah,
happen? We don't need to get super deep, but it just sounds like
yeah.
it'd be like massive like chaos drinking from a fire hose managing that.
I look back, and it was way less chaotic than you might think. You know, John Chambers was the CEO of the company the entire time that I was there. And John, his whole story was we need to tell stories about our culture. And so what
Mm-hmm.
most we would parade all the leaders of the organization in those classes. It was a week-long class, and we would tell stories of how we got to where we were at that point in time in the networking world. And we had great stories about our culture, and and I could tell you many of those stories. I mean, they were good, and we tried to do everything we could to keep the culture together. Now realize those 1,250 people were in every function in the company, not just the sales organization. So they were
Oh yeah.
manufacturing, they were everywhere. Just it was in helping them understand the company they were joining. And what happened in the sales side of things is being able to add that many people. I mean, I'd walk by John Chambers and he would say to me, "How many more salespeople do you need?" And so he would every time I saw him, it was, "How many more salespeople do you need?" And we would just start to fine tune the sales organization. At first, we just had territories. Then we split it into enterprise and commercial, and then we split it into enterprise, commercial, and federal. And And I would put leaders in place, and we had four layers in the organization. So I had 10 vice presidents who all had 3 or 4 operational directors reporting to them, who had 7 RVPs, and every operational director had about a $300 million business. So my quota at the time was 9.8 billion, and we would do
Whoa,
2.5
wait,
billion in
9.8
get
billion
big
with a B? Like
billion
like
with a B.
like a Dr. Evil billion? So you had 9.8 a Dr. Evil billions. All right, keep going. I'm following
Well,
you.
and you mean the operational directors would all be running $300 million businesses on an
Yeah.
annual basis. I mean, it was a crazy, crazy time, and it's a great culture. It's a great company. Still, I'm good friends with the CEO of Cisco today, and he's been there a long time, and they're doing really well. So, I have a very warm place in my heart for the company and the experience that I gained there. And I just got lucky in the end of that, Ryan, by having this idea of moving from there to being, basically and operating a large SaaS company. They were 3,000 people and about 550 million in ARR.
Okay, and that was just so everybody could keep up. That was well, real quick. John Chambers, what was it like working for him?
John is an incredible, incredible guy. He talks about building a family, and he means it. John wants to not just know about the business. John wants to get to know you as a person. And John, he's an incredible leader. I will tell you, he has, in a meaningful way, impacted a lot of people's lives. Let me tell you one quick story that I think you'll find interesting. John, his mother and father were both doctors,
Mm-hmm.
and so he cared a lot about employees that were having health issues, and he got very involved in it. And multiple times, John got very involved. We had a person that ended up being diagnosed with a brain tumor that was basically inoperable. It was a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 being totally inoperable.
Hmm.
John refused to get that answer, got 4 brain surgeons on a conference call, said, who's going to do this surgery? He had a jet fly this employee low levels to Bethesda, Maryland. They did the surgery. That person's around today.
Wow.
I had a woman that worked for me very close to me, got diagnosed with an inoperable tumor, and John got her in. She was trying to get into Johns Hopkins University, and they said, "Sorry, you've already been told by reputable places that it's inoperable," and they weren't going to give her an appointment. John got her an appointment in 1 hour, and she's here today and married and has kids. And
That's
so
awesome.
those kinds of stories build loyalty to a leader that's kind of forever
Yeah,
makes
I
you
mean
forever loyal.
that's amazing. Okay, so all right, so keep going. So next thing you know, you're running a $9.8 billion budget annually that you have, right? And then you're shifting gears. How did you get? So how did the acquisition? I almost said the acquisition of Zoom. How did the acquisition of Webex go down in 8 days, like from time to close? And then how did you get put in charge of it?
So again, they were literally under due diligence to be acquired by another company, and we knew we had to move quickly. So we worked around the clock, literally for 8 days, to get through contracts, all the things that it takes to acquire a company. Now, do realize Cisco was an expert at acquisitions. I was there for 11 years, and I think I was there for 113 acquisitions. So they knew what they
Wow.
were doing in that regard. And then what the reason I got that role is I had a lot to do with why I thought we needed to have a SaaS company in our portfolio. And they said, hey, Doug, good idea. There you go, bud. And so I literally walked in, and pretty unexperienced in terms of running any other function other than sales, and took over a 3,000 person company with all functions attached to it. So changed my trajectory in my career. I went from being a sales leader to being an operator or a
Mm-hmm.
CEO, and I've been running SaaS companies ever since.
Love that. Love that. And so, what was it like having Eric, who's now the CEO of Zoom and founder of Zoom? What was it like having him as an employee? And then, like, were there any indicators that you saw from him that he was going to do something special that stuck out to you, I should say?
Um, Again, he's one of those incredible human beings. First generation Chinese, and the way that Webex was built originally was the corporate functions sat in Santa Clara, and they had three large areas, 2.5 hours outside of Shanghai, that had about 300 engineers in them, and they divided the product to those three different locations in China. And basically, Eric was the point inside of Webex in Santa Clara that dealt with all of those 900 engineers. He
Wow.
literally led all those 900 engineers.
Holy
And then
cow.
when we got acquired, of course, we wanted Cisco gear to be in the cloud for Webex, not the stuff they were using. And so he went through the full transformation of pulling, the whole network into the Cisco cloud. I think there were some frustrations with that along the way, and I think Eric realized, he was in a product, and they've made great. I don't want to. Webex is a great product and a great company, but I think Eric felt like he could go get rid of the legacy and go start something new and bring something really powerful to market. And of course, Ryan, he's one of those people. He could, Eric doesn't. Money means nothing to him. I mean, he's all about helping the world, and he's one of those great people. And it's a pleasure to have known him, to know him.
Wow. All right. So you've caught us present. Amazing stories, by the way. A lot of fun hearing your adventures. And so talk to us about the SaaS journey and kind of like what you're doing today. Because I think your mission sounds amazing, and with kind of where you're progressing, and would love to hear about that a little bit.
Yeah, one of the things in my background is when I left Cisco, I ended up also going to work for Lars Dalgaard at SuccessFactors, and they were the first human capital management application, SaaS application, to put performance management into the cloud, and ultimately the full platform. All the way from core HRIS to learning to the whole cradle to grave HR suite. And I was there through the acquisition of SAP, and I left shortly after the acquisition of SAP, wanting not to be part of another big company. I wanted to be, I really enjoyed the startup mentality of seeing the impact you can have in a smaller company. And so now I'm at Betterworks, and being able to have come from this market and see now to build software that actually people see a benefit in. And you see the impact in a company when smart HR people and good CEOs know that people are the most important aspect of their company now, the most important asset. Put these new processes in place that actually get people engaged and working on the right stuff together. To your point, Ryan, they do much better in terms of generating revenue than those companies that don't go on this journey. To the point I told you, I just recently wrote a book because 75% of the companies in the world still don't go to these new processes. They still do the old ones because
crazy.
That's what they know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I mean, it's the annual review, right? It's like let's do the annual review, and I think where you started off the episode with is the more leading view of like where people want to go, as opposed to like what you get penalized for is really positive. And as you can, I mean, there's a lot of pushback from employees right now. I mean, people do not like their employers, right?
You got that right.
I mean, so
and now they have places to go and complain about that, whether they go out to Glassdoor or there's lots of places to go complain blind about your company while you're working for your company. So it's definitely an interesting time.
Okay, and so can you repeat the name of the book too, if people want to check it out? And
yeah, it's called Measure What Matters. I wrote it with a woman that is our HR transformational leader. I had worked with her now in 2 companies. She actually was a SuccessFactors customer of mine, and she had been doing amazing things in transformation in a 100,000 person company. And I had her come over and help other HR leaders realize if they go through this transformation, then it's worth it to see what happens at the other end of it. And so we wrote it from perspective of me being a CEO, knowing how to leverage a really strong HR leader, and her looking at it from an HR leader's perspective, working with a CEO who sees the benefit of a strong HR leader. And so it's a bunch of chapters on the transformation, and then a little bit in the back of the book about what Betterworks does to help you do that.
Okay. So that's amazing. And I mean, like, I got so many questions for you, but we have such limited time. So I think like one of the things that I'm really curious about is with that and her experience and your experience and everything that you've looked at in the space and growing and managing big teams, like what are the core 3 to 5 most important things that any CEO or leader could do to, I should say, kind of two fronts, right? Connect with their employees, but then also create the most value from having them as a part of your company.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I would tell you, the irony around all of this is most CEOs and their direct reports don't actually go through the annual performance review process. They're like, I'm not going to waste the time to do that. And so they don't even experience the horror of that whole process themselves because they kind of refuse to do it. And so my advice to a smart CEO is, hey, go down and experience what you're putting your people through with this process, and you'll be motivated to go to your HR person saying, oh my gosh, we got to change this somehow. And then also finding a right partner in HR. And then this is an important one for me. And now having sold to HR for many, many years now, there's really kind of two HR leaders. There's leaders that they're kind of there. They're there for compliance. They keep you from getting sued. They make sure you understand the laws around what needs to transpire with people. But then there's an HR leader that is probably your best sounding board. They're your mirror. They understand your strategy. They're kind of operationally focused, not, HR focused. They're like, okay, this is the strategy for the company. Here's the skills our people need to have for us to win in this environment. And hey, Mr. CEO or Miss CEO, these 3 people on your team are not going to get you there, and you need to do something about it. And they hold a mirror up to you, and they, make sure that you're doing the right things structurally to get your company to be successful. And so when those 2 people come together and have that right relationship, it's pretty magical to watch large organizations go through that transformation. And I've seen some great companies do it, and I see the results of those changes.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And then what about tactically taking it one step further? So you're a
Yeah,
frontline
I will.
leader, manager, like what's the best way to execute, from what you've seen with all the clients you've worked with, all the teams you've led,
Yeah.
what do you think? What's your recommendation there for leading people?
Well, Ryan, where the world of HR, where I'm taking the world of HR is going to help people, because managers are the least invested person in the company. It's like, hey, you did really well. Now you're a manager, and good luck. It's learn on the job. And
Hmm.
many of them never make the transformation from being an individual contributor to being the skills of a manager to grow somebody in that role. And again, it's also an event. You do it at the end of the year. What you need to do is be talking to people all the time around what they're good at, what they can get better at, who they are, where do they want to go, having open, honest conversations and being transparent with them about where they're at. And that's a difficult thing for people. But you know what? I know you're a huge Chat GPT fan or AI fan, LLMs. That's going to change the world of HR too, because now we're going to be able to have, a co-pilot for a manager saying,
Hmm.
hey, I'm getting ready to have a tough conversation with this individual, and they don't work well with others. Hey, Mr. AI bot in my product, how do I have that conversation? And it'll instantly put out, here's the 10 steps to take to have a difficult conversation effectively. And eliminating people's need to write reviews. AI will write the review. You'll
Hmm.
just make sure that it reflects accuracy and reality. And so we're busily, day and night looking at AI through not just in the product, but in every function in the organization. It's changed marketing. It's changed, anything that's repetitive, support. And so I'm all over it as a CEO, and we're spending a lot of time reinventing ourselves so that this process becomes something that really helps people. It'll really give you feedback that is meaningful for you. It'll actually be something that changes your performance. It'll remove bias from the HR process, which our HR processes are filled with bias today. So I'm
Hmm.
super excited about that. I didn't mean to take you down that rat hole, but I think it's going to
No,
really
it's
be a game
okay.
changer.
As you can tell by my profile, I love talking about AI. I've been fascinated with it. What was
Yeah.
something interesting? Like as long as we're talking on the HR topic with AI, one of the things that I looked at was like, okay, like I told ChatGPT to basically act like Gary Tan, who's a CEO of Y Combinator, right? And I'm like, okay, back
Yeah.
into like I had him say like, okay, what are all the go-to-market strategies that are optimal based on the best success patterns that people have had, right? Rank them from most successful to least successful, and which was really good. It gave me like I think it said 8 or 9 core patterns. And then I'm like, okay, tell me what's the ideal founder for each type of go-to-market strategy, and list their ideal backgrounds, traits, like
Oh, wow.
communication profile. And it did a pretty good job from what I saw. So that was something that I thought was like super unique. You just had to give it the right context and put it through the right lens, if that makes
You
sense.
do. It's all about how developing the right way to ask the questions. Yeah.
Let's do two things then. I want to ask you two quick questions, and then we got to kind of wrap things up because we're almost up on time. So the first one is like, what's the single best strategy that you've seen used or you've used personally to grow a business?
Well, I'm a big believer, Ryan, that the company with the best team has the highest chance of winning. And
Mm-hmm.
I have seen organizations keep mediocre people in roles way longer than they should. And I think even John Chambers always had a saying that I never move somebody out too quickly. We to me, you can only move someone so far down the path to becoming I don't love the term, but an A player. So go hire people that get the job done for you. Uh, you know, uh, Wrap your arms around them, let them know how much they're appreciated, get them on a career path that matters. And so building the right team to me matters a lot. And I'm the kind of leader where I have a very low ego environment in my company, and I don't believe in lines, and I don't like people that believe in lines. And I tell everybody I hire, if I find out you're passive aggressive the day after I hire you, I will fire you the next day. I don't have any patience for it. I want smart, hardworking people that have an opinion that come to the company and challenge it every day and have fun doing it.
No, that's great advice. What about the, let's flip it the other side. Like, what would you say now, growing the company where you're at, 20 million plus? What would you say is your single biggest challenge in growing the business right now that you're running into?
Well, I wish the world would quit throwing curveballs at us. COVID was not a great thing for the HR business. HR business leaders have been very busy with caring about employees during that time, and now switching it to a slow economy, and people worried about recession. And so I would just like a little tailwind would be fun. But I still many companies are realizing that they need to change the experience their employees have with their products internally, and are doing something about employee experience. And we're still seeing a lot of demand for companies that know that the old ways are not going to get them where they need to be.
So it sounds like managing the rate of innovation, acceleration, and change. To summarize it super simply.
Well, and I think the other one is AI is going to change everything,
Yep.
and I think people need to get their head around that.
Yeah. So true. All right. Well,
Yeah,
unfortunately, Doug, we are up on time. Where can people find you? Where can they find out more about Betterworks and your book?
yeah. Uh, I'm one of those people. I'm very reachable. Doug at Betterworks is my email. Any questions you have about anything you heard today, feel free to reach out to me directly. And the book is available on all those places that you would normally go buy a book, Amazon.com and such. And it's called Measure What Matters. And I'll hold up. So go get it. It's for those of you who want to kind of make a difference to your people. It's a good read.
Doug, really appreciate having you on the show. Love your perspective, love your journey, love what you're doing for the workforce. So thanks for being on, man.
Thanks, Ryan. Nice to meet you as well today.
All right. And I will see you on the next episode. Thank you for joining me today.